Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week, and this week does not disappoint if you like data breaches because there were a ton of disclosures this week, and we are going to get to those. But before I begin, I'd like to thank the following people: Chris Fallon, Ronaldo Abreu, Jason Dance, David Walker, and Jacqueline Wolf for sending me information, whether it's tagging me, linking me, messages, whatever it was. It is always appreciated, and I am more than happy to give you a shout out if you've got a tip for me for breaches of the week. And with that, let's dive right in and start with Family Tree Maker. This is software, and their creator is a company called Software Mac Kiev or Kiev. Now, a server containing information of the users of this genealogy service has exposed the data of 60,000 users. Now, researcher Avishai Efrat at WizCase discovered the leak, which affected, it showed an open and unencrypted Elasticsearch database belonging to Software Mac Kiev. Basically, this was 25 gigabytes of Ancestry user data, user subscriptions, including information such as email addresses, user locations, user support messages, and technical data. Most of this user data was leaked appear to be US residents, but there are others all over the globe. Moving on, let's talk about Telecom Argentina. A ransomware gang has infected the internal network of Telecom Argentina, which is one of the country's largest internet service providers, and they're asking for $7.5 million in ransom to basically unlock these files. Now, the incident took place over the weekend of Saturday, July 18th, and is considered one of Argentina's biggest hacks to date. Sources inside the ISP said that attackers caused extensive damage to the company's network after they managed to gain control over an internal domain admin, basically God mode, on the network. And from there, they were able to install ransomware payloads onto more than 18,000 workstations. The incident did not cause internet connectivity to go down to the customers. It also did not affect telephony or cable TV services. However, many of the official websites have been down since that past Saturday. So hopefully Telecom Argentina is going to excise that virus and get back on track. Moving on, let's talk about Israel's water management facilities, because they just had two more cyber attacks that hit those facilities, and this is according to officials from their water authority this past week. Now, officials said the attack took place last month in June, but did not cause any damage to the organization. The first attack hit agricultural water pumps in Upper Galilee, while the second one hit water pumps in the central province Mate Yehuda. Now, this is according to their local media. These two attacks come after Israel suffered their first cyber attack on their water supply in April of this year. So hopefully they've got that locked down. Moving on, let's talk about Lorien Health Services. This is a family-owned nursing home for basically elders in Maryland, the state of Maryland. They announced that they were a victim of a ransomware incident in early June. Data stolen and then encrypted was the name of the game for this incident. Now, the group that's responsible for this attack is the NetWalker ransomware operators who leaked this information after Lorien refused to pay the ransomware demand. And so, according to the disclosure, and I quote, may have included residents' names, social security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, and health diagnosis and treatment information. Employee data was also accessed, apparently. And according to the breach notification they sent to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the number of impacted individuals is 47,754. So heads up, if you or your loved ones use Lorien Health Services, a nursing home for the elderly in Maryland, or rather a chain. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the word meow. That's what a cat says. We're going to be talking about that word because more than 1,000 unsecured databases so far have been permanently deleted in an ongoing attack that simply leaves the word meow as its only calling card, according to internet searches performed on July 22nd. Now, this all first came to light with a data breach of UFO VPN Hong Kong that I talked about last week, and this data basically just wiped out the data with no ransomware note or any other explanation. It just left the word meow. Now, Bob Diachenko of CompareTech was the one who uncovered this and said, And I quote Mr. Dyachenko, "I think that in most of the latter cases, the malicious actors behind the attacks do it just for fun because they can and because it's really simple to do. Thus, this is another wake-up call for the industry and companies which ignore cyber hygiene and lose their data and data of their customers in the blink of an eye." And I would tend to agree with him on this, that yes, we need to be aware of these things. And if you have an entire database wiped out, you're not even having to pay a ransom, it simply says meow, you've got a very serious and very easy flaw that people are going to essentially exploit. So heads up to you online, which is pretty much everybody. Moving on, let's talk about Holland & Knight. They are considered a big law firm. Back in December 2019, Holland & Knight was hired to handle a stock transfer. Now, they are basically them plus the transfer agent, Continental Stock Transfer, and Tassel Parent Inc. are being sued by Sorensen Impact Foundation and the James Lee Sorensen Family Foundation. Now, according to the complaint, a quote, malicious third party intercepted the correspondence, assumed the identity of the plaintiff, forged documentation, and basically had the law firm wire $3,124,940 of a payment to a Hong Kong bank account. Obviously, not the Sorensen individuals or where it was supposed to go. And so here they are getting sued. BEC, or business email compromise scams, are getting worse and worse. So please, heads up to you, don't be like Holland & Knight, and we'll see where that goes. I'll keep you up to date. Moving on, let's talk about Highway 407 in Canada. Apparently that is not just a highway, it is also a company or organization, because a 37-year-old Highway 407 employee has been charged in a data breach of customer information. Now, the company basically operates the tolled 400 series highways, and said back in May of 2018 that the personal information of roughly 60,000 customers was stolen from its offices, quote, sometime over the past 12 months. So that would have been between May of 2017 and May of 2018. The stolen data was limited to account names, addresses, and phone numbers. And so York's Police Financial Crimes Unit launched an investigation and finally made an arrest of an employee this past Thursday. Varun, known as Bobby Sani or Sinai, of Toronto, has been charged with mischief and data, basically mischief to data and unauthorized use of a computer, and he's due to appear in court in November 15th. But heads up to you if you use the tollway for the 407 in Canada, presumably around Toronto. Moving on, let's talk about Adif, ADIF. This is the Administrator of Railway Infrastructure in the country of Spain. They reported on July 23rd that cyber criminals leveraging the Revil or Our Evil ransomware threatened to release stolen data if Adif did not comply with their demands. This incident came after two previously unsuccessful campaigns against Adif, during which the attackers claim they took 800 gigabytes of data, including personal information and accounting figures. A statement from the threat actor online reads, and I quote, "We advise you to get in touch immediately. We have personal information, including correspondence, contracts, and other accounting." Now, the attackers also threatened to launch a third attack if Adif did not comply with its demands. So hopefully, Adif out of Spain will get that locked down, and I will keep you up to date on that. Moving on. Let's talk about GED Match. Now, you may have heard of them. They are a DNA genealogy site that law enforcement actually used to find and identify the Golden State Killer decades after he had committed his murders and then disappeared. They took his DNA, ran it through GDE Match, and were able to find relatives who then pointed them to the actual killer. Now, GDE Match, and you know where I'm going with this, sent in a message emailed to members that it posted this past week on Wednesday, that its Facebook page this past Sunday, a week ago Wednesday, and last Sunday, 7 days ago, that a sophisticated attack on their servers through an existing account made the DNA profiles of its members available for police. And so that is a very serious issue, because the profiles were essentially made public so that anybody could essentially search them. Now, GED Match briefly resumed, but then they shut down again after it was the target of a second breach on Monday, like 6 days ago, when all of the user permissions were set to opt in to law enforcement matching. So somebody basically seems like they're turning this on and letting law enforcement look at absolutely everything. So GDE Match said, in their statement, and I quote, "We can assure you that your DNA information is not compromised, as GED Match does not store raw DNA files on the site. When you upload your data, the information is encoded and the raw file is deleted. This is one of the ways we protect our users' most sensitive information." GED Match also said that it was informed Tuesday, this is 5 days ago or so, that customers of MyHeritage, which is an Israel-based genealogy website that had a massive breach years ago of something like 80-90 million records, they were informed that people that were both GED Match and MyHeritage users together were a target of a phishing scam. So we'll see where that goes, but people might have given up their credentials and gotten access into GED Match. We'll know soon. Moving on, let's talk about Chilton County in the state of Alabama. Now, a suspected ransomware attack, has caused a temporary closure of their network. Chilton County implemented a shutdown after it was targeted by ransomware the morning of July 7th, and their county commissioner, Joseph Parnell, so basically took to Facebook to talk about this, saying that this caused a temporary disruption of their computer records and systems. And so here we are. So hopefully Chilton County will get that basically fixed. I don't have much more information on that regarding that. Next up, we're going to be talking about Garmin, maker of GPSs and wearables and aviation gadgets and all that kind of stuff. They make really cool things. They shut down several of their services on July 23rd to deal with a ransomware attack that has encrypted its internal network with some production systems. Now, the company is currently planning on basically a multi-day maintenance window to deal with the aftermath of this attack, including shutting down its website, basically its ability to sync, like, your smartwatch that's counting your steps and all of that, its aviation database services, and even some of its production lines where these things are manufactured in Asia. Now, in messages shared on its website and Twitter, Garmin said that this outage also impacted some of their call centers, essentially leaving the company in a situation where if you called in to complain that your watch or your flight data or whatever wasn't syncing, Garmin couldn't answer that because they couldn't get calls, emails, or even online chats. Hopefully that they've restored that thus now. But the incident obviously didn't go unnoticed. It's caused a lot of headaches for customers. I personally saw, as I was researching this one, messages, or rather articles to say, hey, you can't sync your Garmin watch. Here's how you get it into Strava or another health collecting app for your phone. So Garmin has been down for a while, and investigating the Garmin app myself, it says basically that we are temporarily unavailable due to maintenance. It doesn't actually say ransomware, but we all know what it is because you are watching or listening to this. And so according to ZDNet, and I quote, "However, the incident appears to be much larger and more devastating than Garmin indicated via its initial statement. And since it's been down for days and days at this point, obviously that's a very serious issue." Moving on, let's talk about the Premier League. This is the UK's top soccer or football league and one of the world's most popular soccer or football leagues. Scammers actually hacked into the email account of a club's managing director, according to a report released a few days ago on Thursday by the UK's National Cybersecurity Center. And this scammer tried to transfer $1 million. I think it's dollars because that's what the article said, although obviously we know the UK goes in pounds. So it might be £1 million, might be $1 million, I'm not sure. Now the article says, dollars, but again, here we are. The only thing though that stopped the money transfer from going through was basically a fraud marker on the bank account that they were trying to send the money to. And so government officials basically did not specify which team was targeted, but that it was shut down because it looked like a fraudulent bank account. And so whichever club almost lost $1 million, thank your lucky stars, the scammers got lazy. Moving on, let's talk about Instacart. The personal information of what looks like hundreds of thousands of Instacart customers is being sold on the dark web. This news broke Wednesday night thanks to BuzzFeed. Now, this data includes names, the last 4 digits of credit cards, order histories, and appears to have affected customers who used the grocery delivery service as recently as Tuesday, of the day before the article was published. Now, as of Wednesday, sellers in 2 dark web stores were offering this information on what appeared to be 278,531 accounts. Some of those obviously might be duplicates or not genuine, but I have to say, I was actually contacted by BuzzFeed for this and was able to confirm that this data looks both recent and legit in the dark web. And so I'm actually mentioned in the article, and I'm not going to say much more beyond this because I think more information will be coming out soon, other to say that Instacart denies this and says they were the victim of an credential stuffing attack, and also that BuzzFeed interviewed two of the people that were victims of this, and they were able to confirm that their transactions were in fact real and recent, which went along with what I saw in the dark web as I reviewed this for BuzzFeed myself personally. So I'm not going to say much more about that, but understand Instacart got a bit of a problem right now. Moving on, let's talk about Western Australia's Department of Health. Their Department of Health was alerted to basically a breach of confidential data thanks to a third-party pager service. And according to their notice, the Department of Health immediately contacted the vendor and asked that the paging component of this service be ceased until it is addressed. The paging service provider has indicated their services have not been compromised, and they're working with their telecommunications provider. So we're pointing the finger, then pointing the finger again. And so patient confidentiality, according to the Department of Health, is of the utmost importance to them. And so here we are. If I have more information on that, I will let you know, but heads up, Western Aussies. Moving on, let's talk about Dave. This is a digital banking app and basically a tech unicorn that's raised a ton of money. They confirmed literally today, Sunday, as you are watching and listening to this, a security breach after an attacker published the details of 7,516,625 users on a public forum. In an email to ZDNet, Dave said the security breach originated on the network of a former business partner, a company called WayDev, which is an analytics platform used by engineering teams. And to quote, as a result of a breach at WayDev, one of Dave's former third-party service providers, a malicious party recently gained unauthorized access to certain user data at Dave. The company said it has already plugged basically this hole and is in the process of notifying the customers. Also, Dave app passwords are being reset after being exposed. So if you use Dave, the app, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about the Nevada Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, or DETR. They are being accused of a data breach due to a report, essentially, of a ton of fraud happening in their department. State officials say that fraudulent unemployment filings are not stemming from any known data breach within the DETR, but we shall see, and that's all I have at this time. That is essentially breaking news for that state. Moving on, let's talk about First American Financial Corp. Now, this is actually an update from a May of 2019 breach where they had 885 million records dumped. It was one of the largest data breaches in essentially global history, definitely in the United States. On Wednesday, a few days ago, regulators in New York State announced that First American was the target of their first ever cybersecurity enforcement action in connection with this incident, and that basically these charges could bring steep financial penalties against First American. According to the filing by the New York State Department of Financial Services, the weakness that exposed the documents was first introduced during an application software update in May of 2014 and went undetected essentially for 5 years. Now, First American basically said that they conducted their own review of this in December of 2018 by virtue of a penetration test, and essentially they did nothing. They discovered this vulnerability, but it was still there. They did not remediate it. And so, to quote the Department of Financial Services, remarkably, respondent instead allowed unfettered access to the personal and financial data of millions of its customers for 6 more months until the breach and its serious ramifications were widely publicized by a nationally recognized cybersecurity industry journalist. And so here we are. That's obviously a very serious issue, and we'll see what happens with First American Financial Corporation. Moving on, let's talk about an app or a website called Couchsurfing. This is an interesting one. They're an online service that lets you find free lodging. Hey, you want to come crash on my couch for free? Apparently I can post that here, and apparently you can find it and come crash on my couch. They're investigating a security breach after hackers began selling the details of 17 million users on Telegram, basically channels on Telegram and other dark web forums. The Couchsurfing data is currently being sold for only $700, and ZDNet learned from a data broker that basically this is going into multiple marketplaces and all of that. They were not able to identify the attacker, but here we are. Apparently, this is coming from, or the advertisement in the dark web, rather, is that this is Couchsurfing's servers were hit in July of 2020. So this data is recent, and we are talking about user IDs, real names, email addresses, and Couchsurfing account settings. Passwords were not included, although it is unclear if the attackers got their hands on passwords and just chose not to share them. So heads up, change your password and hopefully enable 2FA if you use Couchsurfing. Moving on. Let's talk about various federal agencies and private sector organizations, because the Department of Homeland Security's Cyber Division said this past Friday that it had responded to at least 2 hacking incidents at U.S. government and private sector organizations that exploited a critical vulnerability in enterprise software to take control of the victims' computer systems. Now, the DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or the CISA, said unidentified malicious attackers had for weeks been scanning federal agencies' networks for a flaw that is basically found in software made by F5 Networks, and it was revealed earlier this month. The CISA said it's working with multiple sectors to investigate possible breaches related to this vulnerability, and the vulnerability basically allows attackers to execute code remotely on target systems, open up pathways essentially to deleting files, disabling services, or just shutting things down. The attackers are obviously going to continue to exploit this bug, which is the CISA's warning, and so the agency, and I quote, strongly urges users and administrators to upgrade their software to the fixed versions. F5 has fixed this. Please get off your butt and update. And finally, we are going to talk about an ever-expanding issue, and that is the Blackbaud database breach. This is massive, and it continues to unfold, and this is crazy. But their customers in the last week or so, and I talked about Blackbaud last week on my last Breaches of the Week, their customers are now coming out of the woodwork and declaring breaches because Blackbaud declared breaches, so they got all their data hit. This is a serious, serious problem. Now, before I give you the list of those this week that are declaring breaches, and I hope you don't work with or related or have anything to do with any of these, and I'm sure a lot of you might, here is the data that is being reported taken. Contact information such as name, mailing address, phone, and email addresses. Contact, basically demographic information like age, gender, birthday, relationship to whatever the entity is. A history of the donor's relationship. Again, this works with a lot of foundations, charities, and all of that for donor cycling and donor cultivation and all of that. And so it has a history of donor relationship, including donation dates and amount. So if you are a very heavy donator to something, now people know how to target you to try to get money out of your hefty bank accounts. Now, here's a list of the organizations that I found so far, and it took me a ton of time to start Googling all of this because this is a complete mess. So if you work with any of these organizations, institutions, educational places, anything like that, heads up to you, your information may be out there. And if you're a donor to charity, odds are your charity might be using Blackbaud because they are the #1, from what I understand, seller of basically this kind of software. So with that, let's begin, and holy cow. So we're going to start with Crisis, a homeless charity in the UK. Multiple the state of Vermont nonprofits, such as the Vermont Food Bank, Middlebury College, and Vermont Public Radio. In the UK, the University of York, University of College Oxford, University of London, University of Strathclyde, Aberystwyth University in Wales, University of Reading, University of Sussex, Aston University, Loughborough University, Exeter University, University of Leeds, Brunel University, London, University of Edinburgh and Scotland, Canada's Ambrose University, Rhode Island School of Design, Western University of Australia, Western University of Canada, Western University of the United Kingdom, Western University of the USA, don't know if they're related, Des Moines University in Iowa, Bentley University in Massachusetts, University of North Florida, Human Rights Watch, mental health charity Young Minds, West Virginia University Foundation, and Ventura College Foundation in California. The Catholic Diocese of Gaylord, Northern Michigan, the Choir with No Name, Choirs for People Affected by Homelessness, San Diego Public Library Foundation, Cheverus, a Jesuit Catholic school, Open Space Institute, Food Bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina, and Sue Ryder, which apparently is a charity that supports people who are living with terminal illness and neurological conditions, and on and on. And I also know some that have not declared yet, but also use Blackbaud, so we're waiting for that. But wow, this is a breach that is going to keep unfolding, very similar to the Pearson breach of 2019 that got like every flippin' school in North America hit because a ton of them were using it, and week after week. This is going to get massive, it's going to get worldwide, and it's going to continue to expand, and you will find a comprehensive list for the next umpteen weeks probably here on Breaches of the Week, and this is hands down the longest video I think I've done for Breaches of the Week in the year 2020. Holy cow. On and on and on. Were you affected? Let's just go with yes. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.